presentation. Is there any other questions about preparing food?
How many meals will we be preparing up there?
All of them. You will be, so normally the question is how many meals are you going to be preparing up there? A lot of units come in Friday night. They'll have dinner in camp, so that'd be the first meal. They'll have breakfast in camp. They'll have, we provide lunch. It's hot dogs and chili. And then if you're staying that night, obviously you'll need dinner and breakfast for the next day. Some units hike out. You know, a fair number of units will hike out after activities and be out Saturday evening. So they'll just eat a trail meal kind of heading out.
Around what time on Saturday are they hiking?
We will have the formal activities done by 2:30 in the afternoon. And so then if units go back and get packed up, they're going to be hitting the trail you know, by 3:30 or 4 o'clock and hiking out. For the scouts here, though, the key that Wayne's talking about is if you can think about how your meals go when you go on a regular camp out, right? If we were to do this, if Wayne were to go, if we were going to go over to Pinnacles and go hiking, and Wayne shows up with pasta and sauce and throws it in his backpack, what's he going to have when he gets there? Right? It's going to be a mess, right? So the concept here is get this stuff pre-cooked at home. It's going to be cold enough to hold it in your pack while you're hiking in there, right? So you have that advantage for it now. But you're not, I mean, just think about for a moment, you hiked in, and now you're going to start cooking, and you're clunking out those, the pasta shells that are bing, 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 hitting the bottom of your pan. You got to get the water hot. You got to get everything, you know, you're trying to get your tent set up and everything. If you've thought it through, then you're going to be able to break out something that's really just needs to be heated. It doesn't need to be cooked. And you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. You can get a good hearty meal in your patrol. So that's the key to this thing is the pre-cooking. Stoves, we can talk a little bit about gear. These types of stoves will work okay for a short period of time when you're up there. If you're cooking for a long period of time, these are going to become less efficient and they may not even work because the butane will freeze. But for just heating this through, you're going to be able to get that thing fired up and it'll be enough to get a meal heated. We've never had a problem. We're on these for a short period of time. But if you're going to try to make a 3-course meal and start from scratch, you're probably going to be losing your heat. So that's kind of the concept. So senior scouts and patrol leaders here, this is what you want to be thinking through. Okay, you don't want to be bringing up a bunch of stuff that's going to take a long time to cook. But it's got to be hearty. Okay, thank you, Wayne. Let's have a hand for Wayne and Joe. What I'd like to do, Scott, are you okay coming up?
Sure.
Great. I'd like to do one more presentation, then we'll take our break and stretch our legs and so forth. Scott Shively's here, and he is a great friend of the Scouts. He's done, he and his company, Herb Bowers, Sporting Goods here in Fresno. You can leave here for the moment. You need to Scott has had a lot of experience in running, outfitting companies and doing adventures and so forth. So he has a lot of experience. And Herb Bowers is great for a couple of things. One is, you know, they have great gear. But you may not always be able to go out and buy the top high-end gear for every one of your trips. They're great. They got great advice in there too. So if you go in and talk to them, you tell them what your budget is, what your limits are, they're going to help you out. And they're going to help you out with making some good decisions. So Scott's here to talk, and what I asked him to talk about, to focus on, was keeping your feet warm and dry.
Base layer stuff.
Base layers, and your keeping your hands warm.
For the Scout discount.
And you can talk about Scout discount, absolutely.
I will be stalling here. I'm going to grab some stuff out as I get through my little list, which hopefully I brought my list. Once again, I'm Scott Shively. I'm the manager of the camping and backpacking and mountaineering end of the store. For 15 years, I ran an outfitting company. We were actually the largest commercial outfitting business in the state of California. And I don't say that to try to let you guys think that I'm the most knowledgeable person in the world, but I'm pretty much not the least knowledgeable person in the world. So my opinions aren't just based on what I've used. It's based on being in the industry of buying the gear and seeing what's out there, seeing what's maybe an improvement on what people have been using for years. I'm also a dad, so I realize that I'm not going to go out there and buy the most expensive stuff all the time, unless my son can guarantee me he stops growing, which I don't want him to at 7 years old. So I'm going to try to give you a good feel for this stuff. We do rent items too, like things. We rent ski bibs, which wouldn't be a bad thing to use. They're insulated, they're waterproof. For the time that you guys would likely use them, it would be probably 15 bucks. It could be 10 bucks if it's a one-day thing. But anyways, you might want to think about the rental stuff too. That's a good way to get through things. I do have a little sheet here, which rather than me reading it to you, which is going to be really exciting, I'm going to let you read through it. We've been around for 50 plus years, and while I do understand there are many other options, and 50 plus years ago, if you didn't know that a store was in your town, you couldn't buy anything from the store, and that's not the way it is these days. But we do appreciate when you guys use us, because for us to stay around for another 50 plus years, we got to try to keep the dollars local rather than going to New Jersey like Camp Chawanakee, which I bought many things from Camp Chawanakee. So anyways, the biggest thing that I was told to talk about, and I hope I'm not stepping on too many other people's things, are basically staying warm, which is really a key when you're doing anything outdoors. It's a key summer and spring and fall, but it's a huge deal in the winter. And something I used to always tell my campers, and my company primarily took Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, youth groups, some company groups, but basically there's a lot of kids around. And as we're standing out there, and myself and the other guides are all layered up and all ready for the evening, and then some whole group of little dudes over here were in their shorts and their t-shirts and stuff like that. That was a good reminder for me to tell you it's a lot easier to stay warm than it is to get warm. So think in terms of, I'm cranking the darn heater in the car on the way up there, whatever it takes to get warm, and then don't just go out there in your t-shirt and then see if you can get to a point where you're gonna be cold, because it's gonna be hard to heat back up, especially when your gear that you're gonna be putting on is probably not pre-warmed for you. So think in terms of constantly trying to do the battle of staying just a little warmer than you'd like to, because that's a high-class problem to have, especially when you're outdoors. Now you guys have got another series of things going on, like hiking to the camp, and I guess you haul all your gear on sleds and such. So you do need to realize that layers are the way to go for sure. So if you have somebody who gives you a jacket that was just used by a successful climber on Mount Everest, it's probably not the jacket you're going to want to use. It'll cover you great if you're standing there, but it's not going to be a very versatile piece. So unless you plan on having a whole sled full of clothes just for yourself, hauling behind your sled full of food and full of everything else you need to bring, it's probably not a good idea. So layers are a good way to go. I'd rather have 4 or 5 thin layers that I can keep building up on than 1 or 2 layers of different thicknesses that aren't going to cover me under all different arrangements. And as you're doing active things, the great news is you're warming up. The bad news is if you're sweating, then when you stop, that moisture has a tendency to want to freeze if you're in a cold enough environment, and you guys might be in a cold enough environment. So do think about that too. And that's where, and almost everything I heard was spot on, but that's where cotton, you really want to avoid cotton if you can. I mean, boy, I would rather go to Old Navy and buy a $10 piece of fleece than have a pair of jeans on. Now that $10 piece of fleece, the first time you wash it, about 50% of it is going to get stuck in the washer and it's not going to come back out. And that's why when you buy better fleece, it lasts longer and works better. But for your purpose, it might be be all you need. Because if you've got things that can get wet and stay wet, even if they're as part of a layering system, if I've got a thin nylon pants over my jeans are wet, whether they're soaking wet or partially wet, and that will absolutely ice up and freeze up, and you've got a nice layer of ice, you know, this far from your skin, and you can't figure out why you can't warm up. So things that get wet and stay wet and aren't designed to still keep you warm while they're wet are what you want to avoid. I'm going to be less sporadic than I just was there, but the biggest thing you want to work on is, the first thing you want to remember is put sunscreen on. I went snowshoeing last week, put sunscreen on, not enough on my nose, and I'm still going through the layers of skin to get through back to my normal nose, but it's pretty easy to get sunburned, and you know, if you get sunburned, boy, you're up against it, because you could still have all the perfect clothes, and now your largest organ, your skin, is now fighting against you to try to come to some sort of balance, and you're not in a great situation. So it's easy to forget when it's foggy and when it's, you know, cool, and then as you drive up towards Shaver Lake, all of a sudden it's not foggy anymore often, and even if it's foggy up there, the burning rays are still coming through. I had a map here somewhere. But anyways, I mean, you guys are going to be at, you know, 5,000 something feet total, so that's a lot less atmosphere than we're used to down here at 330 something feet. So just by nature, you're going to be more likely to get sunburned. So I don't know if you guys hike on that, but really, my gosh, that is the first thing you guys should all do as you get out of the car, is apply sunscreen, but you should also probably apply it before you get in the car too. So your drive up there, you're not likely to get too sunburned, but I'd rather have you guys have just layer upon layer of sunscreen on, because that's a very important thing. And also sunglasses too, guys. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have ever, you know, been out there and had snowball fights without sunglasses on. It's really hard on your eyes, and that's something that certainly, as I've done high altitude stuff, well, we've got some pretty amazing glasses that we use, but just, you don't need to go out and buy anything super expensive. Just make sure you invest in a cheapy pair of sunglasses. So the cheapy pair of sunglasses are probably still okay to cut out the UVA and UVB rays that are coming through. So really do to watch that for sure. And then what's the one, if you can only insulate one part of your body, what's the one place your head, for sure. So if you're going to run around naked, make sure you got a hat on, for sure. and with hats, once again, I mean, a lot of like the stylish hats might be you know, knits or whatever, but as long as they don't have cotton in them, you should be fine. There are certainly, my favorite is probably merino, which is a wool. It's a different type of wool than, I mean, rag wool that we all knew from years ago is kind of like a cousin of steel wool. This merino is a much more high-tech wool too, and you need much less of it to be as efficient as rag wool. Rag wool you might have needed, say, a ½ an inch. I'm making up a number here. For merino, you're going to need less than half of that to get the same wicking. So, you know, it's something that's this is actually made in Nepal, but by little Nepali people with their little hands and sewing it in there. I'll probably meet a Nepali person and he'll punch me in the nose. But a hat that has some ear coverage is not a bad call also. These guys here from Mountain Hardware, it's fleece, but it has a windstopper layer behind it, and the windstopper is the same guys who make Gore-Tex make this thing called Gore Windstopper, and it goes back behind it, so it makes it completely windproof, which really does add to the insulation. Because fleece in general, especially back to the Old Navy fleece, if you hold it up to the light, you probably can see right through it. While it does a better job of trapping heat than not having something on your head, it's going to escape pretty well. The windstopper not only stops the wind from coming in, but it stops the heat from escaping as quickly. There's some other cool features, like this hat here has got fleece on the inside, and it's got a waterproof breathable shell on the outside, and it can be done up in a lot of different ways. It's got a little magnet on it too, so that the magnet